Can Klint Kubiak salvage the Saints' first-round bust? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Matt Moscona. After further review, we are here listening to what Matt has to say about the Saints' offense. Now, Matt has been down on the Saints. No doubt about it. Matt has been down on Derek Carr. He's been down on the Saints. So let's see exactly what he does. Let's see exactly where he comes up with his take today about Klint Kubiak.
Day 7 out in Irvine for the New Orleans Saints on Wednesday. And after a nice day on Tuesday and day 6, Dennis Allen not as pleased here on Wednesday.
Third day in a row in pads, so I thought, practice was a little bit chippy today, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think our guys are competing. And I think the execution, overall was as good as we needed it to be today. But, that's kind of to be expected a little bit throughout training camp. You're going to have some of these days. And so how do we respond? We'll have a day off tomorrow. How do we respond and come back and have a good practice on Friday? I still think we got some things accomplished. I just don't think it was quite as clean as what I would have liked for it to be.
Understandable. Not every day.
Sometimes, too, you got to remember, this is training camp, right? This is training camp. This isn't week 1. This isn't week 2. This is training camp. So sometimes you're going to hear some coach speak. Dennis Allen might be saying this just to have a chance to test his team. He may come out and say those things just to try and rile his team up. Just to see, okay, what if I come out, say some negative things, put their back against the wall, give them an off day to think about it, and see who shows up that following day. You can't take everything in training camp or practice or whatever super literal. I'm not saying that Dennis Allen's not telling the truth or anything. I'm just saying that there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot that goes into getting your team ready to roll, going through these reps. Especially after 6 days, 7 days of the same thing, it might be time to mix stuff up. So you might get on somebody. You may praise somebody else to boost some competition. You may bring somebody in to boost competition. Like Sean Payton famously brought in a new kicker or punter every single week to try out. Why? To push his kicker or punter. Because they're sitting there and they see people, new kickers and punters coming in, practicing, showing up, trying out basically, and they're thinking, I can't be comfortable, right? I can't be comfortable at all. So all of that is part of this. And you'll see that during the season too. You'll see that during the season where coaches, like Nick Saban's good at it. But after a win, what does Saban do? Saban chews them out. Saban gets on in there. And says, well, we didn't do this right. We didn't do this right. We didn't do this right. And it's 45-0. But Saban's trying to keep his team not comfortable. Okay, so remember that when training camp. Not everything you see or hear is legitimate.
Day is great, and by the time you go this many consecutive days, and especially 3 consecutive days in pads, the day off on Thursday, I think, is going to do this team well. And, of course, they don't play a preseason game until next weekend when they open up the preseason. So that'll give us a much better sense of how they're doing.
That is so crazy, the guys, that tonight's the Hall of Fame game, and we are really close to preseason football, like Saints playing preseason games. Wow.
There was a notable absence with Demario Davis, and DA was asked about that after and kind of disclosed some not great news.
Part of it, he also pulled up with a little bit of a hamstring on one of those one-on-one drills. So we had 2 guys, Tommy Hudson and Demario, that left practice with hamstrings.
I don't care about that at all. If there is a legitimate injury, if he really pulled his hammy, if he strained his hammy, if he's out for 3 to 4 weeks or whatever, I'd be concerned. But I mean, guys, Demario Davis is an older man. I mean, I know for some of the people in the chat, you go to the driving range, boom, you pull a hammy just walking from the cart to the driving range. It doesn't mean you're out for the year. It doesn't mean you're out for whatever. So you got to remember these guys are going to pick up knocks, as they call it in soccer. But picking up a knock in training happens.
Aside from his productivity, the most amazing part of Demario Davis's run with the New Orleans Saints has been his availability. Yeah. Forgive me.
Availability is the best ability.
Not just with the Saints, literally in his entire career. His first 4 seasons with the Jets, never missed a game. Went to Cleveland in 2016, played all 16. 2017, back with the Jets, played in every game. And in his time with New Orleans, he missed 1 game in 2021.
Crazy.
because of COVID, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He's in his career has never missed a game due to injury, which is at that position, as physical as he plays, now into his middle 30s, is a staggering thought.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm not super worried about Demario Davis tweaking a hamstring. Really just want to see what it looks like whenever the Saints open up against Carolina in week 1. But
yeah, if Demario has ice on his leg for the next 5 weeks, I could care less. Like, just as long as he's there week 1, ready to roll, I believe that he will be fine.
It does continue that streak of, like, every day in practice so far, some notable player has left with an injury. Also of note, I saw Nick Underhill over at NewOrleans.football did tweet a photo of Marshawn Lattimore, who was out at practice today, not in pads, just in sweats, watching, but was there with the team. So day 7, this also brought the first opportunity for the media in camp to hear from offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak.
Yep, we covered that video. If you want to see the interview in full and hear my reaction to it, it's on the channel. It was actually yesterday's video.
And 7 days in, I think it's interesting as we look at the offense here. When do you start to see things come together and manifest? Like, for all of us, we have a very layman's eye. We watch a lot of football, but still, we don't know the play that's called. We don't know what they're trying to achieve on every rep and every practice. Klint Kubiak does, and he's done this for a long time. So he was kind of asked, like, when in camp would you actually start to notice if the offense is coming together how you want it to?
Well, I think it's stupid to say, but when we line up against Carolina, we want to see where we're at. You know, we want to be at our best in that.
I mean, the B-52 bomber. But yeah, I mean, and like I said in the video yesterday, again, it's training camp. Training camp with a whole new offensive staff, putting in a whole new offensive system with basically a brand new offensive line. We're not going to know. We're not going to know until week 1. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand up if you remember, how good did the Saints' opening drive of preseason look last year? The greatest drive I've ever seen. It's the greatest drive I've seen this side of Ryan Gosling, okay? And that's a Ryan Gosling Drive movie drop there. If you haven't seen the movie Drive, you probably would not have understood that joke, but great movie. If you haven't seen the movie Drive, incredible soundtrack, I would go watch it. But you got to remember, like, Klint Kubiak and this offensive staff and these players, they're trying to figure things out on a very small level, on a micro level, okay? They're not focused on, are we ready right now? They're trying to get ready for week 1. So I fully believe Kubiak when he says we're probably not going to know until we see this against a legitimate competition in week 1 against Carolina.
In that first game, I think that we're really demanding of these guys, and we expect it to look right the first time. You know, and is it going to be perfect? No, but that's what we expect as coaches, and we're trying to be really detailed as coaches and be hard on the guys. I am pleased with our progress. We're heading in the right direction.
Pleased with progress. You know what? When he started that answer and he was saying, it'll sound stupid, but we'll know against Carolina, I don't think that's stupid.
No,
I actually find that kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Because this is the time of the year where optimism abounds for everybody. And I'm not saying be pessimistic. I'm not saying tell us you're going to stink. But being realistic about where you are, I think is fair. So, you know, the challenging part is always whenever you are so open and vocal about how good you think a player or a side of the ball is going to be, and it doesn't work out that way, that always ends up coming back to bite you. So it wouldn't make any sense for Kubiak to be like, yep, I think we are executing at a high level. I think we are firing on all cylinders. It's like this team learned the offense for a couple of weeks. Like, are out there trying to execute the offense for just a week. Like, what do you mean? How's that possible? So I don't even think the other side is like an option of an answer. It's not realistic to think Klint Kubiak could say that. I actually really respect the candor there from Klint Kubiak. Now, he was asked more specifically about the players' understanding.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, in the interview, if you go watch it, Kubiak was very complimentary of the players and of everyone picking up the offense so far. They hold him to a high standard, no doubt about it. But from what he sounded like things were going pretty good.
And picking up the offense.
That's critical, That's what we harp on every day in meetings. That's what we're teaching, and I think our guys have done a good job of understanding that. And that's our job as coaches to make it look the same, make them understand what we're trying to do. But it's on our players to go beat man coverage and go get open. So they have to know that it's not all scheme. Okay, you got to go win. So it's a two-way street.
Okay, he also, and this is Klint Kubiak, Saints offensive coordinator, after practice on Wednesday. He was asked specifically about some of the players, notably, of course, the two tackles, Fuaga and Trevor Penning. Let's start with Taliese Fuaga. Here was Klint Kubiak on his early impressions of the left tackle.
I'm impressed with Tally. The guy is all football. He doesn't say a word. He works hard. He's hard on himself, very similar to the way I described Derek Carr. So I'm pleased with where he's at. He's the kind of guy we want to be the culture that we want to have. We just got to keep getting him better.
I love that. All ball. Talking to Mike Detillier for so many years on the show, one of the things Mike D always just hammered into my head over and over again around draft time was you never know how money will change a guy.
No doubt.
When they're drafted and they get that signing bonus, does it change their work ethic? Does it change who they are? Does it change how they interact with teammates or coaches or family? Does it change priorities? Do they start spending carelessly? Do they start going out? How does money change you? Well, you can tell pretty clearly with Taliese Fuaga, he's answered that to the affirmative. I mean, it is all ball.
It is crazy. This is totally separate of the Saints, but it is crazy to think about, someone like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl, got an enormous contract in Denver, has proven everything he needs to prove. Probably, $300-400 million made in his career. At one point, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Again, Super Bowl. He's done it all. So for someone like Russell Wilson, it is crazy to think about him going to training camp in Pittsburgh and fighting out for a roster spot to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Think about how many people, think about the percentage of people that if you give them $300 million or whatever, they would do that. I don't think I would do that. I mean, I think it would be, I think the route of Calvin Johnson and players like that who play at a very, very high level for eight-ish years, somewhere in there, and make their money and have their accolades, and they just kind of walk off into the sun with a couple $100 million at 30 years old. It's crazy. It's insane to think about the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Bradys and the Russell Wilsons and players like that who just seem to go and go and go, and doesn't matter what team, doesn't matter what situation, doesn't matter. They just want to play. They just want to be at training camp. They want to be competing. They want to be doing all that. I mean, think about how easy it would be for Russell Wilson to just say, you know what, I've done what my career has been my career. It's been pretty good. Hall of Fame level career. Like I said, close to $500 million. I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here while I'm healthy, and I'm not going to worry about this quarterback competition with Justin Fields and going 10-7 with the Steelers. But it's wild.
He just wants to keep getting better, and that's awesome. For him, it really feels like it's one of those, when the Saints made that pick, we all looked at it and were like, if that guy stays healthy, he's going to play in the NFL for a long time because he checks all the boxes. And so that's, if whether he becomes an all-pro left tackle or just a really good player, we'll all wait and see how that transpires. But he checks so many of those boxes. The other side is sort of the other side of the coin. Trevor Penning, who was a first-round pick, as we well know, we all know the story by now, but he's moving to right tackle. And here was Klint Kubiak on Penning.
More of the same. From the start, Trevor's been buying into everything we've coached him. We've been really pleased with him. And just up front, there's a lot of great leadership there. It starts with Eric McCoy, and guys follow Eric's lead. And Trevor is off to a good start.
I love the buy-in. I think that's massive, especially with the new coaching staff. I'd be way more concerned if you had guys that were not bought in, that were late, that were needing to be disciplined. That doesn't appear like.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of it, right? What Matt's talking about is half the battle is showing up on time. Half the battle is putting in the reps. Half the battle is being there emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever. Last year, there was a lot of conversation around players that were late, players that weren't doing anything, studying game film or at home or whatever. They were parking in the wrong places. I mean, stuff like that. So it sounds like last year there was a bit of a problem with that. There was a problem with people being held accountable and doing what they had to do to be the best of their ability. And obviously a new culture seems to be part of the Saints, and a new staff and new players in certain positions. So it sounds like that energy, that culture, that accountability, that all is much better than it was last year.
For so many years, Sean Payton stressed culture in this organization. And one of the reasons when the Saints hired Dennis Allen, that I was good with them hiring Dennis Allen, was you weren't, in effect, maintaining that culture that they worked so hard to build. Because DA was part of that. And I've said for a long time, Allen is a great defensive coach, and there's no debating that. He's been a great defensive coach in this.
That's one of those things where I push back on, because you can't, culture is not one of those things that just sticks around as long as somebody from the previous tenure is there. When you lose Sean Payton and you lose Drew Brees, you lost your culture. Tom Brady leaves New England. Bill Belichick stayed there. They lost their culture. It's not just Belichick and Brady leaves. The fact that Gerard Mayo is there doesn't mean the culture stays. Sometimes one person is the culture. Sometimes Peyton Manning in Indy. Peyton Manning was probably the culture. Peyton leaving, Peyton's gone, but we still have Brandon Stokely. So the culture should be there. So you really think Brandon Stokely is going to have the same cultural impact that Peyton Manning does? You think Gerard Mayo is going to have the same cultural impact that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, or players like that? There's a lot more to culture than just one person remaining or two people remaining from the previous tenure. So I think culture left. I think that whole thing is is completely wrong. I don't think the Sean Payton or Drew Brees culture truly remained the day after they left. When both of them were out of that building, I don't think there was any of that culture. They may have tried, the players may have tried. The players may have tried to kind of do what they've always done when those two were there, but without them there isn't a culture. You can't duplicate that. You can't replicate that. I mean, you can look at that any situation. You think the culture of the Lakers is going to stay the same when LeBron leaves? Even if they keep Anthony Davis, and even if they keep the same front office, and even if they keep the same coach? No. It'd be a completely different culture. So it's crazy to think Sean Payton and Drew Brees left, but Dennis Allen's here, so everything will be pretty much the same.
This league for a long time. So you have the right guys. I don't doubt that at all. I think you have buy-in and you have leaders and you have all that. What I question is, do you have enough talented guys? And I don't know the answer. I believe Trevor Penning is working really hard.
Talented guys for what is the follow-up question. Do you have enough talented guys to win 10 games in a bad division? Do you have enough talented guys to beat the likes of Carolina, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Vegas, the Giants, Denver? Do you have those guys? Can you beat those teams? Because if you have the talent to do that, that's all that really matters. Do we have the talent to win the Super Bowl? No. Do we have the talent to win 14 games? No. We don't have to do any of that. All we're talking about is, do you have the talent to win this division? Do you have the talent? And last year should have proven that. Last year, we almost backed our way into a division championship. We almost backed our way into 10 wins and winning the NFC South, which probably would have been a bad thing, because we probably would have kept Carmichael. We probably would have kept the whole offensive staff. So it's obvious we have the talent. And if the spots that we didn't have the talent, pass rush, offensive line, we're bringing in talent. Bringing in Chase Young, bringing in Taliese Fuaga, right? Bringing in Kool-Aid McKinstry, bringing all these guys in, bringing in a whole new offensive staff. So I don't understand this questioning of do we have the talent? Do we have the capabilities to win 10 games? Because that's really the name of the game. Is, can we win 10 games and win the NFC South? That's it. And don't look at me like that, Matthew. It's not, do we have the talent to stack up with San Francisco? Do we have the talent to stack up with Detroit? Do we have the talent to stack up with Kansas City? Or no, we don't. But good news is we don't have to.
Hard and wants to be a good starting offensive lineman for this franchise. I just don't know if he's physically able to do that. I don't know if you have enough starting offensive linemen. I don't know if your quarterback, who's a good man, very clearly, good teammate, all that stuff. I don't know if he's a good enough quarterback to lead you to wins. I don't know if
I was having this conversation in the comment section of a video a couple days ago. The comment was like, with Derek Carr and Dennis Allen, we will never get close to 10 wins. We had 9 wins last year. So the idea of like, is Derek Carr good enough? Is Derek Carr good enough to lead you to wins? It's like in the worst possible situation, he led us to wins last year. So as far as I'm concerned, if you can get to 9 wins, you can get to 10 wins. And if you can get to 10 wins, you can win the NFC South. And that's really the algorithm.
Of your defense is, which keeps aging, is talented enough at all the spots to be a championship caliber defense. I mean, Klint Kubiak said it himself. Scheme can only take you so far. Eventually, players have to go make plays. And this camp, a lot of it, especially on the offensive side, is going to be figuring out if they have the guys to do that. Early returns seem pretty good, but as Klint Kubiak said, we'll find out really week 1 when they play Carolina. Hey, thanks so much.
I mean, that's why I always talk about like having a realistic idea of what you want your season to look like. You know, if we're sitting here and we're saying like, yeah, well, the goal is 15 wins in the Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, we probably don't have the horses for that. If the goal is 10 wins in the NFC South, we got the horses for that. So I think we're going to be okay. I really do. I mean, we'll see in just a few short weeks, but I think 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins even is on the table, especially with our schedule.